the Chase Thomas podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
You mentioned a lot happened in a very short amount of time where the game was really over at the half, by and large.
I got that stat for you.
Okay.
Georgia was down 7-3 with 2:30 left in the first quarter. By 9:26 in the second quarter, they were up 26-7. So, yeah, in about 7 minutes, just the game just changed completely.
Well, I have a couple questions for you on how this game changed. If you had to seeing it up close, did you watch any of it like on TV today? Like coming back and watch?
Oh yeah, I had to rewatch that one today for sure.
Okay, how did Georgia dominate Florida after Florida got off to the 7-3 jump? What did you see that Georgia did that really put Florida in a blender?
I think they got pressure. I think that was the biggest difference. I mean, I don't know the stats, obviously, on Kirby Smart's career, but it feels like there's a history of a team puts together one good drive to start the game, and then it's like, okay, we know what they're trying to do, and then it's like that's all they got. I mean, that's essentially all they had until halfway through the fourth quarter. I think it was their next scoring drive. So, yeah, it felt like, I mean, we know we've talked about it this year. I feel like Georgia – not that sacks are an overrated stat, because sacks change drives, like they change games, but getting pressure is ultimately what's most important. And it felt like Georgia, while they could be better at getting pressure, they have done that some, but they have definitely not gotten enough sacks. So to see them get 4 sacks all in the first half too, like they were all over Graham Mertz. And then offensively, I think that's the biggest thing is I wasn't 100% sure how Florida's offense versus Georgia's defense was going to go, but I felt confident that this Florida defense cannot stop Georgia's offense. And it didn't even really matter that Brock Bowers wasn't there. It's like this offense was just clicking.
Yeah, they really didn't miss a beat, but I wonder too, like, was that your biggest surprise that the offense didn't miss a beat without Brock Bowers for the most part?
I wouldn't say so, because I felt like I ultimately didn't think the offense was going to look like, I guess maybe you could say to the extent that it just scored at will, probably the first like 5-6 drives of the game, or however many they had to start the game. But I felt confident that this is what we've talked about with Georgia all year, is they do have so many playmakers. Like Dominic Lovett was a first team all SEC guy a year ago at Missouri. Like Ra Thomas was at least a guy putting up big time numbers on an air raid team, but like putting up way bigger numbers than he is at Georgia. So like, I do feel like a lot of guys, someone like a Jermaine Burton, like he was good at Georgia, but he not able to put up those kind of numbers. So that's just not what Georgia's guys typically do. They spread it out, and if they want to go somewhere, they could probably be putting up bigger stats. But this is just kind of how Georgia does things, and you saw with Brock Bowers out, everybody just did a little bit better. Ladd McConkey's season, and obviously Ladd McConkey's a more proven guy, so his was more just working his way back from injury to start the year. But season high in yards this year, first touchdown of the season. Kendall Milton, even because obviously Brock Bowers gets some carries too, right? Kendall Milton had his season high in carries, season high in yards. Obviously Edwards is what we've come to expect of him, just another 90-plus yard game, a couple touchdowns. And then, who was the other one I wrote down? And Dominic Lovett. He had also had the most yards, season high in yards in this game. So you saw in Oscar Delp, I feel like that kind of set the tone early too. Oscar Delp making like a one-handed snag. It's like, yeah, that's Georgia's backup tight end. Like, I think we're going to be all right. And I just trust Carson Beck. I think Carson Beck, all of Georgia's big plays this year, like I feel like Stetson was better at the deep ball, because it feels like Carson Beck misses his first deep shot every single game. And he had McConkey in one in like the second quarter, I want to say, early on in this game, that could have gone for like a 50-plus yard touchdown. But all of Georgia's biggest plays are those 15 to 25 yard, like crossing routes or just corner routes, things like that. And you see them hit guys in stride, and then they turn into a big play. And I think that was the backbreaker at one point in this game. I can't remember if it was this late in the second. I think it was early in the third quarter, and it was 26-7, and Georgia had that 3rd and 11, and then boom, you hit McConkey for like a 50-yard play, and it's like, okay, this one's over. But yeah, I thought if anything, I was surprised about is that Georgia really just shut down Florida's offense completely. Like the green line stat of the week, I got you, courtesy of my brothers. This is the Jake Green stat of the week. 150 of Florida's 339 yards came on the final 2 drives of the game. So that's a good chunk of what they did the entire game really came in garbage time against Georgia's second string. So you saw the havoc plays, like the sacks, the forced fumbles, the blocked punt. It was just it's one thing to win big, but when you're having those big plays, it's just it really like it just gave so much momentum to Georgia. It seemed like, and that's what we saw in that 5-6 minute period where they just went from down 4 to winning by 3 touchdowns.
What would you say is the biggest gap? Like, I saw how Tennessee Florida win, and I don't think there's a big talent gap there. But like, where would you see as the biggest talent gap, or where the biggest? I mean, it doesn't have to be talent. Where the gap is the biggest between the two programs right now?
Between Georgia and Florida?
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to just be at the I mean, it's kind of everywhere, right? Like, because I would say the biggest gap between Georgia and everybody is just what they consistently have on both lines of scrimmage. Like, this isn't even one of Georgia's better defensive lines, like in terms of like they had four freaking first round picks on the 2021 defensive line. And obviously Jalen Carter is an absolute monster, was on the team last year. But like, this one doesn't necessarily have that superstar. Like Mykel Williams, he's a really good player. He hasn't necessarily had that kind of like breakout superstar year that people kind of anticipated, but you just have a lot of really good players up front. But you also look at the skill players, and it's like, I think the skill players that Georgia has are on another level than Florida. Like, you just don't, there's just not that many guys that really worry you. Like Ricky Pearsall is like, he's a good player. I don't think he's great by any means. And I think that's pretty much the go-to guy in their offense. Trey Wilson, like that guy, he's a true freshman. He looks like he could be a potential star in the making. But yeah, I don't know. I think right now Florida's just got to recruit. They got to get those classes up. And I mean, they got the third ranked class in the country right now. So I think that's the biggest thing is these rosters are completely different.
Interesting. Final thing here. Now that you get through Florida, and friend of the pod, Chris Marler, pick Florida to get the upset this week.
Cold take.
Didn't see it. I didn't see this being the one. I still maintain I don't think Georgia gets out of this season undefeated. Like, I just think it's just unprecedented at this point. So I'm betting against it. And the injuries, they're piling up. The injuries are really just adding up for this Georgia team. And that's part of the deal when you play a lot of games over the course.
It feels like Georgia's getting healthier, though.
Maybe. Hey, knock on wood. You better knock on some wood right now.
I mean, currently, like, Bowers is out, but yeah, they got, like, Amarius Mims, by all intents and purposes, was supposed to be ready for that Florida game, and he was in full pads, and you kind of got the vibe. It's like, we don't need him. Like, let's let this guy sit longer. Like, we're kind of dominating Florida without our starting right tackle. So let's just let's get 100%. And maybe that's the case with Bowers. Maybe he is ready to go by the Tennessee game and he's dressed and you're like, things are going good. Let's give him a few more weeks. So, not saying that I just automatically feel confident that we can beat all these teams without Bowers, but there is a chance with how good Georgia looked this past week.
Yeah. And then, well, this is the final question here with the Dawgs. Mizzou, Ole Miss, and Tennessee remain. So you get Mizzou at home, which I was talking about with the Tennessee Vols guys earlier today, was I think a sneaky important thing about Mizzou right now for Tennessee, because we'll get to Tennessee's big win at Kentucky over the weekend, but I think getting Mizzou right after Georgia is actually pretty huge, because you saw what Texas A&M was when they came to Knoxville after having to play Bama the week prior, and Tennessee was banged up in this game after playing Bama the week prior going into Kentucky. I think getting the Dawgs right before Tennessee comes to town, I think is huge for Tennessee, because I think they need all the help they can get, and they need Mizzou as banged up as possible. So I'm I don't know how I'm gonna.
So wait, I'm not following. Whose perspective are we talking from?
Oh, Tennessee.
This is Tennessee. You're
Yeah,
saying Tennessee
we lucked
gets
out on the
Missouri
schedule here.
after the Georgia game.
Yeah, we lucked out in the scheduling here that Mizzou has to play Georgia before Tennessee. So we didn't know Mizzou would be this good, but this is going to be a tough back-to-back for Mizzou. So when you look at Mizzou at home on Saturday, you had some struggles with them last year, but it was on the road. It's just a different thing. And you're a 15-point favorite right now, I think, what I saw coming out. Then you got Ole Miss, who I think is actually the best team on your schedule remaining. They looked great again this weekend. And then you got Tennessee on the road in Neyland, which Tennessee has also not lost a home game since Georgia came in 2021. That was the last Tennessee home loss. So of those three, based on what you saw this weekend against Florida and where you think Georgia is, of the three, how would you rank most likely for Georgia to actually drop their first regular season game in forever?
I think of those three, I think you're right. I think Ole Miss is probably the best team left, but I think Tennessee still has to be the biggest upset alert game, if you will, just because it's in Knoxville. The fact that Missouri and Ole Miss are both